and communicate the essence of these issues. So I really want to make sure that everybody understands the moment that we have here to support such a special candidate who's come to visit us in San Francisco, a place that we all know and love so much, and I'm sure Andrew has a lot of ideas about our future, both in San Francisco and beyond. So let's put a round of applause together for Andrew.
Thank you San Francisco, thank you Mannys. It's so great to be here with you all. How many of you have heard me speak before in some setting, like the giant rally we had a little while ago? I'm going to go inside baseball. Figure some of you are Yang Gang vets. I don't need to bust out Yang Gang 101 on you. So, I talked a little bit before about where the campaign is. We're at such a fun, crucial time where we just pulled at 5% yesterday in New Hampshire. So one joke I tweeted a while ago was, I love Iowa and New Hampshire equally until the data clearly indicates I should spend more time in one than the other. So at least that one's like a nice feather in the cap for New Hampshire. So I'm spending a week, I'm going to Iowa from here on Thursday to an AARP event, and then I'm heading to New Hampshire. So I've been to Iowa now 14 times and New Hampshire 15 times. So I'm getting to know both states very well. And so now some of that work is paying off. We got an endorsement from the gubernatorial candidate the last cycle in New Hampshire. And so then after that, I went to events with him, and our name recognition and our support levels in New Hampshire just started going up from there. So this is a crucial time because we're positioned to be one of the last 8 or 9 campaigns that makes the fall debates. And so it's been, I talked before in the general talk about how when you're running for president, you hang out with a bunch of the other candidates in like the Iowa union halls and the New Hampshire diners and whatnot, and you actually run into each other. The field's about to shrink a ton. And so that shrinking field, the fact that we're positioned to be one of the last 8 or 9 campaigns is such an achievement for us. It's really awesome. And those anyone who's contributing to the campaign, someone told me in Washington, D.C. that they are stunned that someone has come out of nowhere and beaten people who've been preparing to run for president for years. Like sitting senators and Congress people who've been gearing up for this run for a long time, and then the Andrew Yang and the Yang Gang just came out of nowhere and sort of like crowded a bunch of them out. I'll tell you guys a funny story about when I was in South Carolina with Joe Biden and the gang. There were 20 of us living in this holding pen in the fish fry. And we all were supposed to go up and give our spiels in 1 minute. And it was so awkward. The whole thing was so awkward. I was candidate number 16 or something like that out of the 20. So I go up there, and then this chant comes out of the crowd going, Andrew Yang, Andrew Yang. And I was just react like this, and everyone's like, yeah. And then like when I say, Amazon, like, what are they doing in there? Like, everyone, like, knew the lines. Everyone was like, what's the oil of the 21st century? Technology! And and like, the whole thing. And then at the end of it, I, like, jumped into the crowd. There's actually some footage of me doing this. And then I went back into the holding pen with the other politicians, and they all looked at me like, what the fuck is that? There's some footage of that online, dude. The whole thing is hysterical. And so that's what the energy of this campaign that's just very, very different from the other campaigns, and that's why we're positioned to be one of the last 8 or 9 campaigns standing. And if you're one of the last 8 or 9 campaigns standing, the oxygen starts to leave the room, but we're going to end up absorbing a lot of the energy around people that are looking for a different kind of candidate. And I'm so pumped for that opportunity, because the field shrinks, we get more airtime instead of having 20 people all competing. I have to say that the debate stage is a very, very distinct environment where you're with someone who seems totally normal before the cameras go on, and you all get out there. Then all of a sudden everyone's like, there are these, clearly rehearsed attack lines and everything else. You're like, holy cow, what's going on here? And I've been in a very happy position too, that no one wants to attack the Asian alternative candidate wants to give him money. It's like, I was like 5th or 6th on the stage, so it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go for that guy. So I knew that going in, and that's going to be true for the debate at the end of July as well. But I cannot wait for better and better opportunities to actually make the case to the American people in the fall. And so what we're waiting on right now is 3 more polls that put us at 2% or higher, and then that would cement our place in the fall debates. And so this is where the campaign is right now. I was just talking to Zach, my campaign manager. I had approximately 9,000 Twitter followers like a year ago, and now I'm at like 526,000. To use this as a numerical reference, when I told people I was running for president before, it was literally president of what? And now I can't leave the house without people just yelling "Yang Gang" at me and everything else. It's so fun. So the energy around the campaign has been so enormous, and it's very, very different than the energy around the other political campaigns. Because a lot of people, raise your hand if this is the first political thing you've ever been to. Yep. Oh, look at that. That's what I'm talking about. There are a lot of people who've never been involved with politics before that are energized by this campaign. And that proportion of Americans who don't get involved with politics is enormous. At least officially, it's 25% of Americans are politically disengaged. So if you're keeping track of this field, if you get that 25% activated and energized, then you can run the table. You can win the whole thing. Especially if your appeal transcends political ideologies. So this is an historic opportunity. And now that we've come this far, I look around all the time and say, man, from going from 0 to where we are now, that's a minor miracle in political terms. That's why the folks in DC are so stunned. They're like, I've never seen anything like this before. And so to me, going from this point to contention and winning the whole thing is actually a smaller leap than the leap we've already made. And I will say, on a personal level, to make this next leap will require evolution for me, for the team. What got us to this point is just like a startup. How many of you all work in startups? A lot of you. So if you work in startups, you know what gets you from point A to point G sometimes stops working and will not get you to letter LMN, right? And sometimes it's even true that some of the people that got you to letter G are not the right people to get you to letter LMN. So in the case of candidate, you can't switch candidates. So it's like, it's definitely like, you'll be like, oh, that attack something else in. No. But there are different capacities that you need to build to get to that next point. And I'm happy to say that as a campaign, we're now equipping ourselves with the tools for the next run. We're adapting, we're hiring. I personally am adapting and evolving and growing. And I'm excited about it. Like the opportunity now is very, very clear, the path, the vision. And we would not be there if not for everyone who's bought into the campaign early, which is many people here in this room, like Miles Laster, Giselle Huff, other people that have been behind us from day one. And I gotta say, the people who've been bought in from day one, I hope you're pleased to see where we've gotten, but you have not seen anything yet. So thank you all. You all are tremendous. Appreciate the heck out of you. Would love to just take a lot of questions and get to know some more of you. So yeah. Ask you? That's very convincing. I'm going to give him the mic and then we'll find a woman in the back.
Thanks, Andrew. One of the things you talk about a lot is redefining the measures for economic success. I think that's super exciting. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts on how you're going to measure mental health and well-being.
So my brother's a clinical psychology professor, and so I know there are actually pretty good measurements out there. The crudest measurements are just surveys of well-being, like how people are doing, how happy are you. Those data points are better than nothing. You can do better. You can build a measurement that integrates things like, frankly, deaths of despair, drug overdoses, depression, anxiety, prescription drug levels. But the crudest measurement would just be surveys of national well-being, which if you're starting with nothing, then you might as well start with like a measurement that everyone at least can understand. But because of my exposure to my brother, I'm very passionate about the fact that we have a mental health crisis in this country.
Yes, we do.
And we can do so much better for so many people. So I'll just relate this on a personal level. So when I was 13 or 14, I was like this somewhat angsty Asian kid, and my school decided I should see like a counselor type of thing. And so as a kid, I was like, oh, I'm talking to the counselor, and I just talked about myself for 40 minutes, whatever it was. Very enjoyable process. I did it a number of times, and at some point she was like, "You don't really need me. Like, I'm gonna let people know it's like this is," but I really benefited from it. And then my brother got into psychology and everything else. Like that, I firmly believe that virtually everyone would benefit from some kind of mental health resources, some kind of counseling. And at the adolescent level right now, the stats are really jarring. And one of the things that got Zach motivated and during the campaign is that it's independent of quote unquote like your success level or your educational level. Like if you go to college campuses, competitive college campuses, it's everywhere. Everyone is struggling. It's not like people who are winning in our current rat race are like, oh, I'm happy. It's like, there's so much despair and unhappiness and searching for some kind of higher meaning among people at every point in society. And so to me, that's like a crisis, a silent crisis that is going unaddressed. And so to me, if we have a massive investment in mental health resources, and then you have even basic measurements, that would be a huge quantum leap forward, including having a psychologist in the White House to destigmatize these issues. And I thought that was a good idea before the current administration. Let's have a woman. You want to run the mic over to her? Thank you.
Thanks so much. Hi, Andrew. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. One of the most notable things about your campaign is that you represent these incredibly progressive values that I think speaks to a generation of digital natives, and at least for me, my generation, grown up with that divide. And it's part of what makes you so memeable. And it's fun, right? It is really fun. But one thing that I've noticed that has been missing from the new leadership paradigm that you've been carving out is feminine empowerment, women's issues focused kind of wokeness that is needed to truly usher in systems change around leadership, around kind of essentially a new world order. And I would love to give you the space to talk openly about that and hear any of your thoughts.
Oh, thank you. What's your name?
My name's Kai.
Kai?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Kai. That was beautiful. And I could not agree more that we need to rethink leadership in a way that goes well beyond whatever our crude male archetype is right now. And to me, one of the traps we're in is that for many women to feel successful, that a lot of it is trying to emulate and replicate male corporate behaviors in some settings. And that to me is not actually helping us move forward, that we need different models of leadership, including feminine leadership that can look very, very different in very different settings. So I'm on record saying that if you get too many men together alone for any length of time, we kind of become idiots. that societies, organization, companies, everything functions better if you have men and women working together at the highest levels. That to me is just a sign of a strong organization. And that when women do have the opportunity to lead organizations, you can see things are completely different, like in very, very positive ways a lot of the time. And when I meet female leaders and entrepreneurs, to me, like I ran an organization called Venture of America, many of you know, and actually a couple of fellows are here today, Laura Burke and Moran Lee, that I've known for now 7-8 years. And seeing them mature and grow has been one of the joys of my career. But one of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing is I see all the barriers to female leadership and entrepreneurship around the country. The barriers are so profound, it is staggering. And it's like at every step of the way. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so driven to try and create an economy that doesn't function around people's willingness to adapt to what the market sets our values at. Because to me, the market, unfortunately, tends to systematically undervalue women, and that's something that we need to rethink if we're going to have the women leaders emerge that we're going to need to solve the real problems of this age. But, yeah, Kai, women female leaders, oh my gosh, like I love it so much, and if there's a way that we can integrate that into the ethos of the campaign in some way, I would be overjoyed. I think I promised him. What's up?
So yeah, we all want you to win. You mentioned that there was like a new joiner base for the campaign that if you could activate, that you would have like a huge chance of success. And so like as this room represents, like what can a new joiner do? Or what does your campaign need in terms of a volunteer base to help you get to the next level or to win this presidency?
Well, thank you for the question. Not a plant. Not, not my cousin. So you all are the smart friends that other people look to tell them about what's going on in the future. That's the truth. And so if you let people know, hey, there's this Andrew Yang, and then send them your favorite video clip, interview, podcast, something, and just spread the word that way, that's actually enormously valuable, because each of you is an influencer in your own circles. If you want to get involved with the campaign, go to join@yang2020.com. But we have a very active Yang Gang here in the Bay Area. We have several, actually. And then they get together and try and advance the campaign even independently of us. We run on passion and money. And so if you have an abundance of either of those things, we certainly will help. Events like this are tremendous. I do come through the Bay Area periodically, and so if you're interested in co-hosting events like this or a party, getting a bunch of like-minded people together, that's actually immensely helpful. And where's Dylan at, or Zach? Over there? There he is. So the handsome man with his hand up, Dylan Enright. Even your name sounds fictional, man. It's not made up. Dylan Enright. Anyway, so Dylan Enright's are one of our finance leads in the campaign, and so if you want to co-host something and get people together, just talk to Dylan. You can get like a whole bunch of people. Like we're having another event in Silicon Valley where it's going to be like a giant bar and like hundreds of people and like all that stuff. So it can be fun, it can be boring, it can be anywhere in between, as long as there's money involved.
We have time for 2 more questions.
Right here, pick the cripple.
Yes, miss.
Thank you. I'm a survivor of really great childhood trauma, and The Body Keeps the Score talks about how the hidden epidemic of many societies is childhood development trauma. And 1 in 3 children, 1 in 3 girls are abused before they're 18, 1 in 6 boys are abused as well. That's a lot. And millions and millions of children are constantly not being seen. I never hear about policies towards survivors and how to help us reintegrate into society, because we have complex PTSD too. I love that you talk a lot about mental health, but one of the studies that really have been caused me so much hope is it's a party drug, but it's called MDMA, and like they're helping PTSD survivors actually process the memories, the traumatic memories. So I want to ask, what kind of policies do you have for survivors? And yeah.
First, thank you for sharing. Will you come and give me a hand? It's not just you, obviously. There are millions of Americans who've had similar traumatic experiences. I was profoundly impacted by the research, the ACEs research, about the impact of childhood trauma and how it makes it impossible for many kids to learn. And so when politicians focus on education, so many kids don't actually have a chance to really take advantage of an education because of trauma they've experienced or stress levels in their household. And so to me, if we can equip survivors with some sort of resources and a runway forward, that would be an immense leg up. And many people, to me, what proportion of people do you think that would benefit from counseling and therapy actually get it? Right now?
15.
You said 15, very small.
10%.
10%. It's probably something in that order of magnitude. 10 to 15% seems about right. So imagine the good that could be done if you can get that percentage up to 50% or something along those lines, which I think could be achievable if we were to put tons of economic resources into people's hands and then actually have an economy that's geared towards trying to make us stronger and healthier. Right now, to me, our society is so almost pathologically competitive, where if you're not high functioning, then the motivation is to just bury it and be like, oh, just keep it yourself and the rest of it. So if we can try and open up the sense of shared struggle and that people have access to resources, then we can hopefully make it easier for survivors to progress and reintegrate in very healthy ways. That would be my vision. That's the hope. We can certainly do much, much more. And I, like everyone here, I mean, I have friends who've been victims of various trauma, and it's hard because it comes back to you when you least expect it. It's something that doesn't fade in many, many cases. I'll go to the other side of the room. Yes.
Hey, everyone, this is an education question.
Oh, sorry, but one other thing is that you referenced MDMA and stuff. Like, I'm for loosening restrictions on various forms of drugs that people are able to access in various ways. I'm like not for necessarily like total legalization of all drugs, but I'm for exploring looser regulations on many of the federally controlled substances right now.
Yeah.
So this is an education question, and I really appreciate your policy on increasing teacher salary as a former teacher who left because you couldn't make a living wage.
Sorry, brother.
And I still have friends who are in the profession who are struggling. But like,
What's your last name?
Slayton.
So that was cool, Mr. Slayton, and I'm sure his kids miss him. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you very much for that. I think it would solve a lot of problems, but there's still lots of teachers who you couldn't pay enough to stay in the classroom because of the experiences that are going on there and the kids, the inequality. So like, I grew up in 3 years of inner city public school, and my teachers, I'm surprised they stayed that long. So like, more money, great, but like, what can we do to solve the inequality at that level, and moving forward, kind of like help these kids leave high school or even like middle school with that sense of purpose you talk about, so that they have kind of a shining star to look forward to when they leave.
Yeah, so mission number one is just to get more money into the hands of the parents and households. 65 to 70% of K through 12 academic performance is based on non-school factors. So that's parental income, parental time, words read to the child when they're young, stress levels in the house, trauma. Like, these are the things that actually give kids a chance to learn or not learn. And so if you put an educator in schools right now, they're in impossible situations oftentimes where it says, you're responsible for 100% of educating our kids, but we're going to give you too many kids and you can only control 35% of their outcomes. I mean, that's the reality of being a teacher today. And so if you just put $1,000 a month into every American's hands, how many kids would have a better chance to learn? How many parents would be able to spend more time with their child if there were 2 adults in the house? You're getting $24,000, and one of you can stay home. I mean, there are huge changes that we need to make. One of the stats that I mentioned earlier in the other interview: 40% of American kids are born to unmarried mothers today, and the data around children brought up to single moms is really adverse for little boys in particular. If you're a little boy, if you're a little girl, I mean, we all know single moms are superwomen. And if you're a little girl and you grow up with superwoman as your mom, then you're like, oh, like, I can be superwoman too, and like your outcomes are actually okay. But if you're a little boy and you grow up with superwoman as your mom, you start to think guys are losers. If that's like the only thing you see is like your super mom role model. And then the data around little boys growing up as single moms is unfortunately not very good. And so if you end up compounding that, they have behavioral problems, they go into school, and then they struggle in various ways. And the teacher's like, what am I supposed to do? I've got these kids, like, little boys in particular, is like running around. And so the problems end up compounding and stacking on top of each other. The goal is to try and get more money into the household and then make it so that teachers, it's not just paying teachers more, is that the teachers have to be able to do their jobs. And they're not able to do their jobs right now because the households don't have adequate resource and the kids are not being set up to succeed at all.
Do we have time for one more question? Dylan?
One more question.
One more question. You have to make, this is one of your hard decisions you're going to have to make. The last question.
I will close my eyes, no, I'm kidding. Sure.
Hi, my name is Phil Dingra, and I kind of have a fun, memeable question. What do you think about, if you were president, would you fund national esports teams?
It's a fun, memeable question indeed. I tend to be attracted to problems that the market is not addressing. And I feel like there is private money for esports teams, and thus it's not something that I feel like the government has to shore up. Yeah, so that's my
Andrew,
quick answer. But
what's an esports team? I don't know.
Bigger than regular sport.
It's people playing video games very, very competitively for money, and it's televised, and you get branding and sponsors, and they get paid more than real-life athletes. It's the future of sports in many forms.
But there's no physical activity at all?
Well, unless you count key commands and being insanely fast and accurate.
No.
Physical activity.
Doesn't sound like a sport to me.
It has sports in the name, Manny.
That doesn't count, Andrew!
Yeah, let's get another question because that one was fun and meaningful. The man from the cast.
Yes. Man of the cast.
Elements to be here.
Awesome, thank you. First, thank you for bringing like intellectual thinking into the political process. We need a lot more of that these days. So, something that I'm curious about and something that might be an interesting thing to do would be, if we're talking about intellectual issues, one of the problems that I have trying to convince people to, get it all in on UBI and stuff is, if you read a lot of books and you've looked at, Ray Kurzweil and a lot of these trends, that clearly the future is going to be automated and a lot of people are going to lose their jobs. And we're already seeing the first problems of that. But explaining this to people often, for me, takes like visualizations and showing data and stuff. And I just wonder why more politicians don't use visual presentations during their speeches or even pulling up, charts or whatever, because these are sometimes complex issues. And if you're running a campaign that's not necessarily just an emotional appeal campaign, sometimes you need some type of visual. Images are worth 1,000 words. So what do you think about bringing more visual, a simplified keynote into some of your presentations that shows some of these statistics, visualizes some of these changes that are happening? I know that Obama, in one or two of his State of the Unions, had a visual presentation on some of these changes, and that was a game changer for me and a lot of millennials that I know. We think in visuals, we watch YouTube and stuff, and so what do you think about, is that something that you would consider in your campaign, and what do you think about visual learners and getting some of these complex concepts to a point where they're easy to understand?
I love this question so much. And I love it in large part because my rise, the campaign's rise, was fueled by long-form conversations and videos. Some people read the book, where it's kind of a long education process about universal basic income, some of the automation issues. It's in some ways really terrible for sound bites in cable news interviews, but for most political candidates, their entire medium is going to be sound bites and cable news interviews. And so it's been an interesting progression for us. I love the idea of my campaign using Keynote and various visuals. There's one reason we were tinkering with the hologram. You guys remember that?
Yeah.
I could have so we'd send a hologram to places, and the hologram could actually hologram. So we looked it up. Both pronunciations are correct. All the hologram speakers, you can speak it. So you can imagine a hologram actually becoming like various visuals and whatnot. You could become like freaking like Gandalf or something, and being like, and now I'm going to show you automation. You go, so hopefully we can find different ways of communicating in different forums. It's been a really interesting challenge for me, conveying some of the core ideas of the campaign in 5 minutes to a crowd of 1,000 South Carolinian voters, 200 voters in Iowa. We're just trying to get some of the key ideas just through speaking. But I love the idea of having short form videos and everything else.
Manitoba story.
Sorry?
Manitoba story, the short form video.
Yeah, the Manitoba video.
Yeah.
People, some of the videos maybe of the people I'm giving some money to in various parts of the country, or people, when you make a reel for someone, they realize just how ridiculous it is to think that $1,000 a month is somehow going to hurt someone.
Right.
So you give someone $1,000 a month, they're so happy to use it on something productive. When you show people that, it tends to take the abstract and make it real. What's your name?
Tyson.
So Tyson, when cool videos come out, you can be like, it's because I asked him that question
Yes.
in San Francisco. So
Video's
thank
the
you.
best. Love it.
Thank you, Manny. Thank you, Yang. All the best. Love the big selfies. Thank you all. I love San Francisco. I'll be here all the time.
Thank you very much, Andrew Yang. Everyone's favorite part is coming up. Well, not favorite, but one of people's favorite parts is they get to actually meet you.
Yes.
Isn't that exciting?
Yes.
For them.
I mean, I love it. I love meeting Yang. I feel like I'm among, my tribe.
Should we do a little Yang Gang chant, do you think?
Sure, let's do it.
Is there a tune? Or how do we do it?
There is a rap. We don't have a speaker or anything.
Okay. Yang Gang!
Yang Gang! Yang Gang!
Yang Gang! Yang Gang! Yang Gang! Okay, thank you, Chris and Zach. We're gonna move this table back. Zach and Chris are gonna move this table off the stage. And then, Andrew, you're gonna stand right here in front of our mural of activists who protected low-income and senior housing in Soma. Just look at them for a second. And then the line is gonna start here. So if you would like to take a photograph with Andrew, he'll sign a book too. Dylan has books back there for free. He'll give you a book. Andrew will sign your book.